Howdy, model railroad talk fans. Well, in this episode, we are talking about 3D printers. Last video, I guess, we kind of talked about the things to think about if you decide you want to get into 3D printing for our hobby of model railroading. Just a recap of those, make sure if you're in the early building stages of a model railroad, it can be beneficial to have your own, depending on what machine you go with, what resin you go with, and if you have the time to learn the program and learn the machine and get the machine zeroed in. But on the flip side of it, if you're looking at, okay, well, I want to save a few bucks printing a few detail parts here and there, you're probably going to be behind the game. You're probably better off trying to find someone who has already made those parts, whether it be a big manufacturer or what I call, the little guys, the small guys that are doing this stuff. I keep bringing up Jono's Junction and Pete's 3D Models, and that's because I have purchased from them, and their products are great. My biggest thing is, as you can see, I'm still in the building stages, and the stuff that I can't find online, I need to be able to print. So check out those guys. I know Pete's 3D Models has got a lot of good things. And then Jono's Junction, he's got some awesome stuff over there. So check them out. But in this episode, though, or this video, if you will, we are talking about 3D printers. There are two types of 3D printers. You have filament, which most people think of when they think of 3D printing, which is basically you have a base plate, you have a nozzle, you have filament that goes through, which is solid plastic. Think of it like a hot glue gun, how that works. That's kind of the same thing. But some of them, the plate moves, the plate and the top piece moves, and it's just the top piece. But basically it draws and, layer by layer by layer. We talked about this in the first video of this series. Think of it like a loaf of bread that you buy. If you were to take that loaf out of the package, unstack it, and then rebuild it layer by layer by layer, that's what these do. This is a resin printer, which it does things kind of backwards compared to the filament printer. Instead of having like the filament going through a nozzle and the nozzle heating up, you have a liquid tray, or a tray here that has liquid resin in it. Underneath here, there's UV light that shines up through, and in between here, there's actually a screen that for each layer, in a sense, the screen puts what needs to be printed. Think of a screen on a tablet or your phone, kind of the same thing. It's a monochrome, most of them are monochrome. So, it's not like you can hook up and watch movies on them or whatever, but so like, if you're doing, let's just say you're doing a basketball, okay? The first one's gonna be real small, right? And basically, your build plate will drop down into the vat, and that small thing it'll project on the screen, or it'll come on the screen. UV light shines up for X amount of time, and that's a totally different world. Different resins take different times and settings, but it'll shine UV light on it, which UV light and resin, UV light cures the resin. And then it stops. This actually lifts up a little bit, pulls it off the plate, and then goes back down, and then it's a little bit bigger and does the same thing. The LCD projects or puts that little bit bigger piece on there. UV light hits through, so on and so forth. And as time goes on, as this layers up, it gets bigger, then it'll get smaller, and then you're into, and when it's all done, you have a ball or whatever it is you are printing. through my research of this up to this point, the filament printers, which I would love to have one, I just don't have the space, and would learn to love that, or love to learn that as well. Filament printers can be a little bit quicker, and most of the time, depending on the size, depending on your size comparison, most of the time a filament printer, you can build bigger things on it because you have a bigger build volume on it. A lot of cosplay people like those because they can do like masks and helmets and and do them all in one piece. Whereas a resin printer, even like Elegoo's biggest one, you're gonna have to be doing it in pieces. Okay, they tend to, and of course, like everything, technology gets better day in and day out, right? So, but they tend to, people say with the filament, you tend to see the layer lines a little bit easier. That's not that big of a deal. If you're a person that will go back and sand it and paint it and all that stuff, it's probably not that big of a deal. Resin printing, a lot of the gamers that do the little figures and stuff like that, they prefer the resin printing. The resin printing seems to be able to print the fine details a little better with less layering or noticeable layering, depending on what resolution of printer you have. They tend to be a little bit slower than the filament printing. There again, it all depends on the type of filament or the type of resin and what you're printing. I went the resin route, as I stated in the last video. Our good friend Steve R went through and did a lot of research, passed on his research to me. I, in turn, took that research and I did my own, and come to find out, this was the best route for me to go. I like the Elegoo, and I have the top off here, so while the video is going, if you pay attention here, you can see you may be able to see the screen. Different things get projected on there, and then you'll see the build plate, which is covered right now, will lift up and down, that kind of thing, as it's layering. I like the Elegoo. There is, like anything out there, folks, especially like in model railroading, you have those that like Kato, you have those that like Broadway Limited, those that like Intermountain, and so on and so forth. Then you have the ones that hate maybe one or two of those. And the biggest thing is find the machine that's going to do what you want. I went with the Elegoo Saturn 3. I would love to get their new Saturn 4 Ultra. And for that matter, I wouldn't mind getting the Saturn 3 Ultra, but I would love the Saturn 4 Ultra. It's out of my budget. The Saturn 3, it was in my budget. Everything on my checklist, it checked off. The Ultra versions of the 3 and the Saturn 4, and even the Mars line too. The Mars line's a little bit smaller of a build volume, but same thing. The Ultra gives you some extras like Wi-Fi capability, to where instead of using memory sticks, you can actually send your files via Wi-Fi. They have a little bit quicker print times. There again, that all depends on what you're printing, and the resin you're using, that kind of thing, and how much detail do you really want. I said it in the last video, I'll say it again. Elegoo is not sponsoring me by no means, but you know me. I think you've come to know me on this channel that if I believe in something, I'm going to tell you the truth about it. There are some things with the Elegoo, I know, at least with my Saturn 3s, that I wish they would have done differently. I know, like the Saturn, like on the Saturn line, the Saturn 4 and the Saturn 4 Ultra, they give you, so you see this back here, this is actually an air filter, air purifier, and there's a USB port right under it, and it plugs in. So when you hit the print button, that turns on, and it's like a charcoal filter, basically. I wish they would have done like they did on those and have a second one over here, So I could have purchased 2 of those and put them on the other side. But they also have these, looks the same. They're a little smaller. They're USB rechargeable, but they will do the same thing. That's one thing that I wish they would have done. Having dealt with this build plate, the one thing that I know a lot of people have complained or pointed out, this build plate, you have to level your build plate on these in order, because if your build plate's off, it's not going to go down and do what it's supposed to. This is a 2-point ball system, so sometimes it's hard to get a good level on it. I know the Saturn 3 Ultra, the Saturn 4 and Saturn 4 Ultra, and I believe on the Mars line, which is the smaller one, the Mars 3 Ultra, not Mars 4 Ultra, I think they have what they call a 4-point system, where you have a bolt on either side of the build plate, and everybody seems to say that you can get a better level, build plate level, plus it lasts longer because you have those 4 points of contact versus just 2. So far, I am doing okay with these. Over the past 2-3 weeks, I've had both of my printers. It's a learning curve, just like the hobby. You get into doing airbrushing, you're not going to right out of the gate be able to paint a locomotive or a car and have it look perfect. It's a learning process. So far, I really like the Elegoo series. I would love, like I said, to have a Saturn 4 Ultra, which is their newest one. They do have what's called Jupiter, which is even bigger than this. But, that's also way more expensive, almost double what the Saturn 4 Ultra costs. So, and so some of the things I've printed, I'll show you here. I'm grabbing. So our good friend Eric over on the War Bonds channel, if you haven't checked him out, head on over there to War Bonds, and he is building a GP60M Santa Fe. Okay, so the wide cab. So me helping him out, being a friend, but also it's helping me learn the process. I am 3D printing some parts for his locomotive. Here's one as an example. It is a dynamic brake grill, and you see kind of the size of my hand. That's the size of that. These literally just came off the print this morning. This is a brake. I'm not exactly sure how they go, but this is a brake, parts of the manual brake that I'm actually, I've got over, I just cleaned it out. I'm waiting for the part to dry so I can cure it. Actually the housing for that. These are vents for right behind the cab, right side and left side. Exhaust vents on the back. The reason why I only have one is because I just need to make sure this, I want him to check, and I'm going to send them to him and have him check to make sure they're sized right. But this is the exhaust, or not exhaust vent, but exhaust radiators or whatever, fans, but motor fans. But there's the base. There is the grill, and you can see the detail on it. So as you can see here, it goes together, and there again, see the size of my hand. I mean, I don't have an overly large hand, but I mean, average size. And then what I literally got done today is the dynamic brake fan. It looks about the same. It really does. Really, the only difference is it's flat. If you see there, giving you a little versus. Let me see if I can get it right. You can kind of see this one, the black one is curved at the top, and the dynamic brake is flat. But you can see the dynamic brake doesn't have a lot of detail, but it's just we're trying. He's wanting these parts, and so I said, well, you know what? If you're willing to work with me, I'll print them for you. He can tell me if he likes them and if they work, and the ones that we need multiples of, I'll print more once we figure out if they're, make sure the size is right. The reason why, you're probably asking, why is this one gray and this one black? Well, that's not just because, well, part of it's because of the colors I chose. This is what they call an ABS-like plastic, ABS-like resin. So it's got a little bit more leeway if you bump it, whereas a standard resin is going to be way more brittle. If you bump it, it's probably going to break just like that. That stuff's okay for, like on a railroad if you're doing people, because let's face it, you're putting somebody on. It's not like the gamers do where they're moving around and a lot, unless you're moving your little people around or, rooftop details and stuff maybe you printed. We're in the model railroad community. We are not moving stuff as far as that goes around a lot, so we have to worry about dropping so much. But on his, this is a resin that is actually high temp. It's rated to be able to supposedly handle up to 520 degrees ish. So we're trying them out to see what's going to work better on his locomotive, whether it's going to be the ABS like or the higher temp. Neither of them may work out. We don't know. I do know with resin, you are limited to what properties they have. Like UV resistant, there's not UV resistant resin because resin uses UV light to build. Where filament, they do have UV resistant filament. So the trade-off there is you may not be getting quite as good of a detail as you want, but if you need something that's more UV resistant, that's the way to go. For most of us in the model railroading community, the UV resistant isn't that big of a deal. Most of our stuff is going to be inside. And even if it's going to be something outside, we're more than likely going to be painting it anyways. And if it's something that you're not going to paint, you're just going to, let's say, just run it just like this. Hey, my locomotive's black. I'm just going to, you can throw some clear coat on there that has UV properties to protect against UV. So I just wanted to give you guys an overview of the resin printing and kind of a few comparison notes from resin printing to filament printing. I prefer the resin printing, but like I stated, I would like to also get a filament printer, but I don't have the space. So reach out to us. Let us know what you think. Modelrailroadtalk@gmail.com. Or you can head on over, if you like this content and you feel like you want to support us, head on over to patreon.com/modelrailroadtalk. Go to our Facebook page, you guessed it, Model Railroad Talk, with our logo back here. We also are on YouTube here. If you like this, please click subscribe and like and help us grow. But by all means, reach out to us if you have any questions, concerns, input, whatever. You can comment below. We try to monitor this the best we can. So if we don't respond right away, give us a few days. Sometimes it takes a few days to get responded to you. So in the meantime, thank you for watching, and keep your train on the track.